Just Being Pinkie Pie by HoofBitingActionOverlord. Rainy days. Cotton candy filled the sky. And yes, it totally was cotton candy. No matter how many times Twilight tried to tell her that they were only clouds, Pinkie Pie wouldn't believe it. She got a lick in whenever she had the chance, and they tasted just like vanilla cotton candy. Well, that and rain. They were a little wet too. If Twilight would ever accept Pinkie's invitation to go and lick some clouds together for lunch sometimes, Twilight would know that, but Twilight would always just laugh and shake her head instead. Besides, anything that poofy just couldn't not be cotton candy. It simply wouldn't make any sense. Twilight would always laugh at that too. Pinkie didn't mind. At least it made her friend smile. Now Pinkie watched a vanilla rain-flavoured floating cotton candy cover all of Ponyville, as if the town was a baby water buffalo that needed a fluffy cotton candy blanket to stay warm. It wasn't the average, everyday little white puffs of cotton candy that were content to spend their day lazily floating around the sky, though. This cotton candy was dark, nearly black, and maybe even with a little hint of green. It didn't lazily float around either. It raced through the air almost as quickly as Mr. Cake had galloped into the kitchen that time Pinkie Pie tried microwaving the tinfoil hat she had made for Rarity, because it had just snowed that morning and Pinkie couldn't let her friend catch a cold, now could she? This cotton candy looked about as angry as he had too. Its poofs all swirled and whirled and whirled, which Pinkie was at least 80% sure was a real word, together as it sped through the sky. Pinkie realised with a start that it wasn't cotton candy at all. This was a storm cloud. The park went dark as storm clouds spread overhead. A cold wind blew over her, picking up Pinkie's mane and tail and throwing them into the air as a chill ran up and down her back. Pinkie Pie smiled. Most ponies wouldn't have seen anything special about that smile. Some ponies even thought that all Pinkie smiles were the same, and they couldn't have been more wrong. But what those ponies didn't realise was that Pinkie was an absolute expert in the art of smiling. She had a smile for every possible occasion. She had a big smile for birthday parties, a bigger smile for welcome home parties, and a smaller smile for goodbye but I can't wait to see you again parties. She had a we totally get to play outside today smile for waking up on sunny mornings, and a we totally get to play inside today smile for rainy mornings, and a I totally get to go ice skating today smile for snowy mornings. She had a thank you very much for letting me lick the extra icing off the spoon smile for the cakes. She had a you're really all the bestest friends ever smile for her friends. She had a I can already tell you're going to be one of my bestest friends ever smile for ponies when she met them for the first time. She even had a very special I love you more than anything else in the whole world, even more than chocolate and fruit punch and kangaroos and snowball fights combined smile that was saved just for Rainbow Dash, her bestest best friend / Mare Friend, and yes, she could be and was both. The smile on her face was now a bit of her cheer for my friends as loud as I can so they do really, really well at whatever they're doing smile, mixed with her something really super special extra exciting is going to happen smile. And just a tiny hint of her Rainbow Dash is the cutest, coolest, rainbowiest, even more cutest pony in all of Equestria smile. Now Pinkie Pie turned that smile on Fluttershy and Rarity. The three of them sat on a blanket on a park together as another cold wind passed over the afternoon picnic. I think it might rain, Fluttershy said quietly, frowning. Rarity scrunched her nose up like she had just smelled a rotten strawberry sherbet. I think you might be right, she agreed and then sighed. What a shame. This was turning out to such a lovely day, too. Pinkie's smile faltered just a little. She noticed other groups of ponies in the park gathering up their things and leaving. Well, I for one am not going to allow this setback to ruin our afternoon, Rarity declared, standing up. We'll simply have to move our picnic indoors. Indoors? Pinkie stuck her hoof deep in her ear to pull out whatever candy must have gotten stuck in there. She couldn't have heard that right. Oh, that's a wonderful idea, Rarity. Fluttershy flared her wings and smiled. I'm sure Twilight wouldn't mind letting us use the library. Well, I don't think she would mind, she amended, her smile failing. I hope she won't mind. Rarity snorted. Of course she won't. I'm sure Twilight and Spike both will be delighted to join us. That's perfect, Pinkie said, clapping her hooves together. We should just go get Spike and Twilight and bring them out here too. No, dear, Rarity replied with a frown. We're going to go to them, inside. We should hurry too. Fluttershy, can you please help me with this blanket? Oh, I'm sorry, Fluttershy said quickly, jumping to her hooves. Pinkie Pie stayed put. She frowned. You guys are going inside too? Yes. Those clouds are looking worse by the minute, Rarity said, glancing up. You don't want to get caught in the storm, do you? Duh! Pinkie cried, throwing her hooves in the air. What else would I want to do? Maybe go inside where it's safe, Fluttershy suggested. And dry, Rarity added. And quiet. And warm. Pinkie hopped up in the air before her friends had a chance to say anything else mopey. And fun! She froze mid-bounce and put a hoof to her chin. I mean, the storm. Well, I guess the library is fun too, but the storm will be totally way funner, because you can always go to the library, but this is the only time the storm is ever going to happen, ever. Pinkie cheered with the last of her breath, finally falling back down onto the blanket. The world abruptly flipped upside down and then immediately went right side up again, while the blanket rolled out beneath her. Pinkie Pie blinked as the whole world started spinning again. Oh, I'm sorry, Pinkie Pie, Rarity said, but she kept pulling the blanket out from beneath Pinkie's hooves anyway, rolling her back over onto her side. But we really don't have any time to waste. It could start raining at any moment now. Pinkie watched the blanket fold up into a little square in the air and then float down into Rarity's saddlebags. Fluttershy picked up the picnic basket and rested it onto her back. Pinkie stayed lying on her back in the grass. You guys are leaving? Rarity laughed quickly. Having my mane run by the storm isn't really my idea of fun. Pinkie kept looking up into the sky. The clouds were getting darker. What if maybe Rainbow Dash wants you to? Why on earth would Rainbow Dash want my mane to get ruined in a storm? Pinkie Pie frowned. No, she was right. Rainbow Dash would never want Rarity's mane to get ruined, except for all the time she had dumped dishwater on Rarity's mane. But she had stopped doing that after that time. Pinkie Pie turned to Fluttershy. The Pegasus drooped her head. I'm sorry, Pinkie. I really don't like storms. Pinkie dear, you should really get up off the dirty grass, Rarity chided her. I know you always enjoy playing in stormy weather, but it isn't safe. You should come inside with us. Pinkie paused for a moment and then hopped up onto her hooves. No siree, ma'am, Bob. Are you sure? Rarity asked, looking up and shuddering. These clouds look simply awful. Pinkie shook her head. Rarity sighed and shook her head too. Well, we'll be in the library then. Have fun, I suppose. She began trotting away. Please be careful not to catch a cold, Fluttershy said with a small smile before running after Rarity. Pinkie Pie watched them go. They both cantered out of the park and down the road. Pinkie chewed the inside of her cheek. A lot of times ponies said they didn't understand her, but the truth was that a lot of times Pinkie didn't understand other ponies either. Why did they all run away and hide during storms? Why would Rarity think it wasn't safe, or Fluttershy warn her not to catch a cold? Like any pony would ever catch a cold on purpose. Pinkie thought with a giggle. Pinkie always stayed out during storms, and she had never once gotten hurt or sick. Rainbow Dash would never let her get hurt or sick. Pinkie Pie shrugged and started bouncing out of the park. If all of her other friends went inside, it just meant that she would have to be super extra happy, bouncy and smiley outside to make up for them. She picked up her pace. Rarity had been right about one thing. It would start raining at any moment. Pinkie needed to hurry to get to her spot, or she would miss half the storm. Just as she bounced out onto the road, she felt a little wet, cool drop on her forehead. She stopped. The very first part of the rain was always the very best part. A second raindrop followed the first, this time on her back, and then another on her flank, and then another on her nose. And then the raindrops were everywhere, all over her, all at once. Pinkie heard a horrified shriek from across town that sounded suspiciously similar to a unicorn fashionista she knew. She hoped Rarity and Fluttershy wouldn't get rained on too much, even if it did mean they were going to miss out on all the fun. Pinkie started bouncing again. ponies rushed all around her, running beneath awnings and slamming doors behind them. She thought they looked a little bit like Fluttershy's rabbits did every time they got scared and started hopping every way they could find the bushes and burrows to hide in. She smiled and waved at each and every pony she passed, but they were all too busy pretending to be bunny rabbits to notice. The rain came down harder. It fell in great big raindrops and gathered in puddles on the road. It spilled down the sides of gutters and rooftops. It flew into her mane like a swarm of fat bees that had mistaken her hair for cotton candy. Pinkie Pie made sure to jump in every puddle she saw so she could get as much rain on her as possible as she went. She frowned when she thought how little of the storms most ponies ever got to see. They all ran inside as soon as the storm began. The most they ever experienced of the storm was a quick glance out of the window or a frightened shudder after an especially loud boom of thunder. The only way to really see and enjoy storm was to be in the storm. She didn't understand why every pony hated storms. Storms were important. Without storms, Applejack's apples would never grow. And what would Applejack do without any apples? Pinkie Pie shuddered at the thought. Without storms, Twilight would never get to read while listening to the sound of rain falling on her hoof, and Pinkie knew that this was Twilight's absolutely favourite time to read. Without storms, the Cakes would never sit quietly together in the dark of their living room, sipping cocoa and telling scary stories while the lightning flashed outside. And Pinkie Pie thought those nights they spent together were some of the best, most beautiful things in the world, even if they weren't pretty like one of Rarity's dresses. Pinkie perked her ears. She heard the faintest crackle of thunder through the falling rain. She stopped bouncing and started galloping. This wasn't the time for bouncing, though a little part of her brain revolted against the idea that there could ever be a time that wasn't a good time for bouncing. She needed to get to her spot as soon as possible. She sprinted down the road and out of Ponyville proper as the rain fell harder and harder and faster. She ran down the road a ways, then abruptly veered to the right in some overgrown green grass and up a hill. Not just any hill either. This was the tallest hill anywhere in Ponyville, and that made it the best place for watching the storms anywhere around Ponyville too. At its top, she took a deep breath. She firmly planted her rump down on the wet grass and pointed her muzzle straight up into the air. She waited and watched. White light flashed beneath the overcast sky, and a rumbling growl shook her hill. She smiled. Like the very first rain, the very first lightning was always the very best lightning. If Pinkie Pie was completely honest, she didn't care so much about the storms themselves. She cared about who made the storms. And Rainbow Dash made all the storms. Rainbow Dash really did work hard to make the storms. She worked just as hard as those storms as she did on her flight routines, but no friends or ponies gathered in crowds to cheer on her storms like they did cheer on her flight routines. Pinkie knew that it was her duty not only as Rainbow Dash's friend, but as her Mare Friend, and Pinkie still couldn't help giggling and bouncing a little every time she reminded herself of that, to go out on top of the hill during each and every storm and cheer as loud as her voice would cheer. More than that, though, Rainbow Dash was the storm, and Pinkie Pie loved Rainbow Dash no matter what she was. It was like during Dash's flight routines, and during one trick or another, or all of them, she would do something that was just so Rainbow Dash, like doing an extra double backflip through Flaming Hoop or straight into the wall of the library, which Pinkie was sure Dash did on purpose, that Pinkie immediately knew, and everyone else who ever saw it knew too, that it had just been Rainbow Dash, and it couldn't possibly be anyone else. She felt Rainbow Dash in every part of this storm. She could see her in the rain as it rushed all over the sky and down to the ground. She could feel her in the cool raindrops, like 1,000 little kisses all over her head and face. She could feel her in the dark, grumpy clouds overhead, grumbling like Rainbow Dash did every time she got woken up from a nap. She could feel her in the billowing wind that blew all around and over her, like Rainbow Dash had just rushed through the air past her, showing off a new trick. She could hear her in the thunder that boomed overhead and sounded just like Rainbow Dash's snores, and Pinkie would remember all the times the Pegasus had slept beside her, her legs and wings twitching occasionally with some dream Pinkie hoped was a happy one. More than anything else, though, Rainbow Dash was the lightning. It flew across the sky so fast that the thunder couldn't keep up with it. It hurled down to the ground, perilously zigzagging backwards and forwards, and to this side and to that side, and down and up and down and down and up again at the last moment, so fast you could miss it all if you blinked even once. But somehow it never quite met the ground. It lit up the whole sky so that every pony could see it for miles, and every pony who did had to stop and wonder at how something so beautiful had come into being. So Pinkie sat on the hill in the rainstorm as deafening thunder rocked the sky itself. She grinned as the stinging rain flew into her face and eyes and soaked her mane and coat. She giggled at the roaring wind tried to push her and roll her down the hill. She cheered till her voice went nearly hoarse as brilliant white streaks of lightning struck so close that the smell of ozone burned in her nostrils. She bounced on that hill in the rainstorms while every other pony in Ponyville cowered in their homes. She stayed there through all the thunder and all the rain and all the wind and all the lightning, showing Rainbow Dash that she cared enough to stay. The lightning was the first to go. More and more time passed between flashes until no more flashes came at all, like Rainbow Dash's last few big tricks before the end of the show. The thunder went second. It stayed only around a little while after the lightning, letting out the last few weak little grumbles like Rainbow Dash did after she'd woken up and stretched, but still didn't really want to be up. The wind went next. As the thunder died away, the wind calmed. It slowed to a gentle breeze like Rainbow Dash's breath on her cheek. The rain went last. It always took the longest. It held on for as long as it could, like Rainbow Dash held on to her every time she had to go away, and then again every time she came back. Then Pinkie Pie saw her second favourite thing in the whole world. The clouds thinned, parting just a little smidge. Through that little smidge came a ray of sunshine. In that rain of sunshine, a red, orange, yellow, green, blue and violet of rainbow stretched across the sky. Pinkie stared at the rainbow for a long while, blinking back tears. Then she heard her first favourite thing in the whole world. "Hey, Pinkie!" a raspy, tired voice called to her. Pinkie looked up. Rainbow Dash glided down to her. Rain still dripped from the Pegasus's mane and tail and coat. Her flight goggles hung loose around her neck. Her mane, extra messy, covered half her face, and her normally straight feathers stuck out every way. "How was that one?" Dash asked, smiling. Pinkie reached her hooves and grabbed her messy, dripping Pegasus down out of the sky. She fell back on the wet grass with Rainbow Dash on top of her. Pinkie leaned up and kissed her, tasting the rain and lightning on her lips. Dash sat back and smirked. "That good, huh?" "Better," Pinkie answered as she pulled her back down for another kiss. Rainbow Dash giggled into her mouth and Pinkie giggled back. They held on to each other for a long time as the clouds dropped their last little bits of rain and drifted away. "That was the best one ever," Pinkie said when she finally broke the kiss, which was what she always said because it was always true. Rainbow Dash chuckled. "Cool! You want to go dry off and find something to eat?" "Definitely!" Pinkie bounced onto her hooves. "Oh, I bet Rarity and Fluttershy, Twilight and Spike are still having their picnic in the library. We should totally go! And we should ask Applejack if she wants to come too." Dash stood up and wiped some grass off her chest. "All right, let's go." They walked down the hill together. "Hey, Pinkie?" "Yeah?" Pinkie felt a soggy, dishevelled wing tuck itself over her back. Rainbow Dash pulled her close. "Thanks." Pinkie smiled and nuzzled her back, then trotted into town, staying close together to keep warm. Pinkie glanced back at the hill and silently waved goodbye until the next storm.